Welcome back to Vos de Sueños After Dark. Today is Tuesday, August 23rd, and this episode is part 2 of Sir Ginger's So Long and Thanks for All the Ponies. This episode is also rated PG-13 for mild language. Welcome back, fillies and gentle colts. So, for the lovely podcasty portion of this broadcast, I have yet to have any questions since I'm still sort of building up the fan base. I wanted to get a lot more chapters, episodes up before I actually showed this to Seth. Especially since I'm starting off with just a single story. I may switch it up during different weeks later on, but for now, I'm just going to stick with Hitchhiker's Guide since you guys came here for that and wanted to come back for that. In addition to that, I also thought that I would mention a couple of things. So, I play an enormous amount of role-playing games whenever I get the chance. But I'm not talking about console gaming, because I haven't done that in a really long time, at least not seriously. I play modifications to D&D and World of Darkness and all manner of other things. And last night, I created a character that because I didn't feel like being serious. So last night, I created a character called the sagely, industrious, illustrious, and incomparable Ben! Which I'm sure that most of you can guess is based on the great and powerful Trixie. It is a pseudo-dragon, which is about the size of a gecko with like a 2-foot tail. And he wants to be the greatest sorcerer in the world, except that he was trained by gnome illusionists and doesn't realize that he isn't as amazing as he is. And after the session, one of the players was able to actually make it. This is a guy who has been my friend for a very long time and has started only recently coming out of his shell and managed to thoroughly and completely manipulate the character into doing exactly what he wanted him to do. This should be a character who is a performer and nothing more, and wants to be the greatest ever. But instead, my friend managed to get him into combat multiple times. I only did 3 points worth of damage, but I actually killed somebody by biting onto him like gummy, crawling into his chest, and then popping out like a chestburster with fireworks spouting the sagely and incomparable Ben and shouting the greatest show on earth, after which point he promptly died. So, that being said, the other thing was I thought I would mention some of my favorite fics so that you guys can get a better example of what I may eventually be reading. I think that I've mentioned Black and White in the past, which is one of the best Octavia fics out there. Similarly, The Sound of Sunshine is also a really amazing story. I would like to go back and eventually record both of those. I've also, just about an hour ago, caught up with Past Sins, which is phenomenal. And although I would love to record it, there are way too many female characters that don't have voices in the show that I just don't know what to do with. And I love Nyx too much to try to voice her myself. Besides that, I like Time Heals All Wounds a lot. I also have one of my wonderful listeners going out to crawl through the enormous Happy Luna fic. Oh my. Oh, fillies and gentle colts, that is a mass of stories that I don't have the time to go through. But I will at least read a couple of them, and I will take recommendations from people, because I would like to go back and read some one-shots for Luna, because I really do love Luna almost as much as I love Octavia and Bonbon and Lyra, or Lyra, however you ponies pronounce that. But, without further ado, let's return to The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy fic, So Long and Thanks for All the Ponies, Part 2 by Sir Ginger. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy has many omissions, and, as a general rule, the only way to be sure that it contains an article on any specific subject is to make sure that said article revolves around something the guide's staff are actually interested in. As such, the article on the fantastically dangerous planet Serenium 5 does not note the fact that the beautiful women broadcasting requests for company and judges for bikini contests have an unfortunate tendency to tear any intrepid or lonely explorers into several thousand pieces, apparently for the fun of it. Instead, it goes into rather disturbing anatomical detail, and the article itself ends halfway through a sentence. One article that could do with rather more information is the article on the unconscious self-defense mechanisms that most evolved races develop, such as the production of adrenaline when scared. Quite what any species will do when exposed to an absolute psychological torture, such as the reading of Vogon fanfiction, is difficult to predict without extensive experience. Twilight Sparkle is a unicorn of significant power, and her brain, right about the 8th contradictory element and the 15th overlong description, let the magic take over, in a desperate attempt to save her sanity. She managed to extend the magical field to take in her nearest friends. It's just a shame 3 weren't close enough. There was a brilliant flash of purple light, momentarily illuminating the recital room and its many chairs and restraining devices. As the light faded, Yelts put down the page and peered around through his small, piggy eyes. What they saw did not please them, and the report, sent to the brain, had the hormonal equivalent of "don't shoot the messenger" attached to it. 3 of the ponies, and that little reptilian thing, had vanished. He blinked, then felt a thrill of satisfaction. He was about to get angry. "Who tied the prisoners up?" His voice was dangerous, and it was clear that answering would be almost as fatal as not answering. A young Vogon, too new to know what to expect, raised a hand. "Your vastness, that was left to." He never got further than that, as Yelts had just, in some small way, made the universe a better place. "No snitching," he snarled, lowering the gun. "And if nobody tells me exactly who did this, all of you will die." Internally, he almost smiled. This was fun. One of the Vogons suddenly became aware of a spreading pool of space about him. No Vogon seemed to be moving, but certainly he was left alone in the room. He was very aware of the keycards on his belt and the barrel of the gun now pointed at his head. His brain, which due to the unique nature of Vogon evolution was a malformed liver, worked faster than it had ever done before. Unfortunately, this was not saying much, promotion in Vogon society being based more on stubbornness and anger than anything, and his brain was shortly on display, very viscerally indeed. The ponies left watching were frankly relieved that this was all they had to witness, as at least the fanfics seemed to have been put on hold. Some of those sex scenes had been graphic. Yelts gestured at them. "Throw these inferior ponies out the nearest airlock immediately. The others can't have gone far." Rough hands grasped Rainbow, Fluttershy, and Rarity and hustled them out of the door. Yelts picked a piece of liver-spotted brain tissue off his weapon and snorted in derision. His crew was learning how to avoid giving him even the slightest excuse to pick on them. Soon, he would have to have them promoted, so they could have new things to get wrong. The Hitchhiker's Guide states that evolution simply gave up on the Vogons, apparently from pure disgust. This is not technically true. It is truer to say that the concept of self-improvement was not a wise thing to have on Vogsphere. Friendship might be magic in many places, but in Vogon terms, a good friend was someone no better than you. Any Vogon demonstrating honesty, generosity, kindness, laughter, loyalty, or even magic would have been immediately and brutally disposed of. As for physical improvements, forget about it. So, Vogons remained as they were for as long as it took to invent plastic surgery and space travel, and by then they had become so good at bickering, stubbornness, and pedantry that they very quickly rose near to the top of both the political and bureaucratic ladders in the galaxy. Indeed, there only remains one politician in the entire galaxy with no influence from the Vogons, and he has been locked in a stasis field for many centuries, and as such is in no position to do anything positive. Twilight, Applejack, Pinky, and Spike, meanwhile, found themselves in another cabin, somewhere else on the ship. All except Twilight had minor burns from the magical teleport, which, although more pleasant than a scientifically achieved one, would singe the unprepared in transit. Twilight collapsed. Applejack was immediately on her feet, and with a grunt, balanced the lilac pony on her back. Spike was trembling. Twilight? She's okay, young'un. She just tired herself out is all. The Earth Pony looked around. Now, where in tarnation are the others? Pinky jumped to her hooves. They must have been left behind! Behind with those big old meanie Vogons! They'll throw them off the ship! We have to get to an escape pod and pick them up as they get blasted out! Come on! She galloped down the hall, Applejack keeping pace, Spike puffing along behind. But Pinky, he gasped. What the hell is an escape pod? The others had been roughly thrown into a small room. Fluttershy stared around wide-eyed. Rainbow pounded at the door. Let me out! I'll take all of you on! She had momentarily forgotten how easily she had been subdued and was ready to fight, tooth and hoof, to face the Vogons down. For once, Rarity was ignoring the greasy handmarks on her previously perfect coat. Her magic was geared for precision, enchantment, and beauty. She could create dazzling illusions, light shows, and many other things. But when it came to brute strength, such as punching through the foot of thick steel, she was out of luck. But she could feel electricity in the air. She closed her eyes and concentrated. Somehow, the computational language spoke to her well. Well, a Vogon ship didn't speak well. It spoke in the sort of voice geared to yell obscene compliments to other passing ships, causing them to blush and hurry on. It was the computational equivalent of a drunken lout who is just smart enough to get away with any number of petty offenses. She thought she could hear the right command for open, though. It's a shame, really, how badly she got it wrong. This was a good show of skill from a pony from a place which had barely any computers, and indeed from a pony unused to anything more complex than a sewing machine. The open command she pulsed out was not as specific as would have been wise, and every door in 50 meters responded as though they had been waiting for the command, including the airlock behind them. Technically, even a moderately talented unicorn could summon enough power to keep a pony from asphyxiating in deep space, and most Earth ponies were hardy enough, due to their own untapped magic, see Magical Beings later chapter, to survive there almost indefinitely. That is, if the ponies had extensive training, willpower, and self-control. But training is famously difficult to obtain within 30 seconds of being blasted from an airlock, and that really is the most important of the three in this context. Luckily for them, the commandeered escape pod will pick them up within a mere 4 seconds. Hopefully, this is good enough news to tide you over until the bad news that they were not, in fact, picked up. For the briefest flash of time, and by the most amazing coincidence, a great white ship appeared around the jettisoned ponies, and when it vanished, it left only a few random objects floating in the ether. As it was, the pod did not collect anything more than a large supply of rubber ducks, a small sentient pudding named Charles, and a perfect scale model of Manhattan composed of moldy butter, none of which, in the circumstances, were in the least useful or comforting. At least they might inform a certain pink pony what exactly has just picked their friends up, and that they are most likely safe, if utterly confused. Aboard the Heart of Gold, a boyish voice complained. Fluttershy, you're turning into a tree. Stop it! That's all the time we have today. That was Chapter 2 of So Long and Thanks for All the Ponies. Thank you for joining me. And guess what? The next 3 chapters are already recorded, so you'll have them even sooner than you had this one. Cheers.